Cellspecs has once again inspired me to do my own twist of her video ranking all 2018 animated movies. Link in the description. Again. I have been working on something new that I've told few people about. I'm going to talk about the movies I had the most passionate opinion of, released in 2019. This list will be ranked from least to most passionate and least to most unusual opinion. But keep in mind, the last one is still a movie I have the most passionate opinion for. I chose it instead of a bunch of other movies, after all. If you want to see a ranked movie list from worst to best, it'll be in the description. Download and follow me on Letterboxd, Reasonable Critic, because apparently Letterboxd thinks it's a crime to have more than 20 characters. If you want to see a full list of every movie I saw in 2019 ranked. Ready? Let's get it started. Number 10. Hobbs and Shaw is trash. I honestly never want to see or even think about this movie again, but whatever, I saw it on the list of 2019 movies, and I'll admit, there's two things that I kind of like. But honestly, I had to dig pretty hard. The action. Yeah, the action is pretty awesome. The beginning is like okay. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I feel like this guy right now. Hobbs and Shaw themselves are the most boring and unoriginal people you could make for guys. They're douches that insult each other. They compete with their muscles. They compete for the girl. But wow. Their dynamic is the most boring and unoriginal dynamic it could be. They hate each other at first, but learn to like each other. Where have I seen that again? Oh yeah, every single movie released in the last decade. The story bounces around whenever it wants, but that's okay, because the story is the most boring Protect the MacGuffin. The ending is boring and useless. The jokes are unbearably stupid or incredibly predictable. This movie brings nothing new. There's nothing to enjoy or appreciate outside of the action, which is found in a ton of other movies. For my money, this is the worst movie of the year that I bothered to see. Number 9. Shazam is the second best DC movie because Wonder Woman. It is such a fun and corny ride, and it knows it. Yeah, it's definitely not perfect. There's a big tone and atmosphere issue, and I feel like this movie lost its identity at the end of the movie. Other than that, this movie is endlessly entertaining. The powers of Shazam are really cool. Electricity is a power that has never been seen on the big screen before, so it was interesting to see how it affects everyone. I also like that the hero is basically a kid. We always see adults having power, exceptions, so it's really cool seeing it be controlled by this timid orphan. Speaking of which, the fact that Billy is an orphan really helps Shazam have its own identity. And I'm not sure if the director did this on purpose, but it's interesting to see how much more confident Billy is when he's Shazam than when he's Billy. It helps us understand just how shy Billy is and how confident he is in Shazam. It could be the case of the kid actor Asher Angel and the adult actor Zachary Levi not acting well enough to portray the same person, but who knows? I certainly don't. I'm really glad DC made this because it proves that they can make good movies. I mean, after this abortion, I was starting to doubt them. 8. Captain Marvel was surprisingly mediocre. It has a lot holding it back, and as such doesn't really compare to the last movies released in the last 4 years. Like, if you were looking at a roster of the Marvel movies released from 2015 to 2019, Captain Marvel would feel awful. But it's not. Seeing Nick Fury young was really cool. There are some funny jokes, and of course the cat. The effects are good in some scenes, and the Kree turning out to be evil was a really interesting twist. I also found the quiet moments with Captain Marvel trying to discover herself very interesting. However, for every positive, there is, of course, a negative. Though Nick Fury was awesome, Captain Marvel I found exceedingly dull. She reminds me of Superman in a lot of ways, actually. They're both an overpowered character who don't show a lot of emotion or character traits, and then they come back and save the day. Though Endgame did it a lot better than Justice League. Speaking of which, Captain Marvel is too overpowered. She blows up everything instantly, so the fights with her always feel like she's holding herself back, or they're boring because you know she has to win. As good as the twist was, the villain was not. He's unoriginal and did not work for me at all. There's a lot of good elements, but the bad levels it out to create an all-around disappointing Marvel film. Number 7. Far From Home. Now here is a Marvel film that I found outstanding. Homecoming was a good film, but I never considered it on the same level as Sam Raimi or Guardians of the Galaxy. The three all have a very similar tone, but Sam Raimi and Guardians of the Galaxy were much better. I thought it was a good time, solid 6.5 on 10. However, I can say that Far From Home blew away Homecoming. One of the things about Homecoming that I loved was MJ's and Peter's awkward banter, which pales in comparison to this one's. The chemistry Peter and MJ have is remarkably quirky and dorky, in a good way. This movie took more inspiration from the Sam Raimi trilogy than the first movie did, but doesn't suffer from the insufferable lows the trilogy has. There are also plenty of awesome visual moments that are a joy to watch and some insane surprises. I won't spoil anything else, but let's just say that was the biggest and best subversion I saw this year, and even the best end credit scene of any Marvel movie. I said it. It's true. It also has hilarious jokes about what happened in Endgame and gets you thinking about what the ramifications of a catastrophe like that would have. Do the people who got snapped stay in high school? Are there new kids from 2nd grade who are now in 7th? Since we already saw the consequences on a supernatural level, it's intriguing to see the consequences on a high school level. Overall, I think this proves that Marvel can still make a character study movie that is awesome. Seek this movie out. It compares to Winter Soldier. Yes, it actually does. Number 6. Jojo Rabbit is a movie that I liked in the beginning. It was a funny spoof of World War II where Taika Waititi played a comic Hitler. But when the movie started transitioning into what it was like for Germans who lived in Germany during that period, and how much Jojo suffered from the war and how strong his opinions are on Jews, I went from really liking this movie to absolutely adoring it. This story spoke to me on an emotional level so much that I, for the life of me, could not stop crying the last 20 minutes. I cried 3 or 4 times during this movie. It was such a delightful piece of art, I could not think of anything else after the movie for hours. The way Jojo was raised to think about Jews like he did, and the fact that it wasn't his fault, made me so sad because I couldn't stop thinking about the tens of thousands of kids who were raised so poorly into a system that was racist. Furthermore, seeing Jojo understand how wow, I am amazing at pronouncing things today, it's crazy. Childish his views were on Jews was amazing. This kid sells literally everything. I know a lot of people have praised this movie, but those people are right. That is what prevents it from being higher on this list. Because if this was underrated, it would be at the top. This is a pretty special movie. My favorite of the year? No, not really. I loved Infinity War. In fact, it's in my top 10 video. It was such a subversive, emotional, funny, and different movie. How could I not? Of course, there was a sequel that everyone and their mother came to see. Endgame. This movie is a satisfying sequel, but one that does not live up to the original. There are far more problems with this movie than ones I consider worse. Fat Thor was bad. He was played mostly for jokes, and his character of being a bum is kind of insulting to his legacy, even though I know it makes sense given where he was in the last story. There was way too much fan service in the final battle. They wanted like 9 epic moments, and it deflated the greatness of the scene after the 5th one. Don't worry, the scene is still revolutionary. The comedic timing was also pretty obnoxious. However, this movie has a lot going for it. The endings they came up with the original cast were poetic, especially Cap's. The scene where Peggy and the Winter Soldier dance made me the feels or whatever, and it was so wholesome. Plus, it makes sense and was cleverly foreshadowed over a decade worth of movies. That's honestly just awesome. Of course, Tony had an amazing ending. The others weren't quite as awesome, but they still left you satisfied. This will probably be the most negative review you see, and I would still recommend it if you're interested. So it just tells you how much good this movie has. These next movies I have strong opinions of, and oh how rare these opinions are to see. Maleficent is, by all accounts, a good movie. However, I found the sequel to be much richer, more interesting, and all around better. The score perfectly describes the intensity and emotion of every scene. I especially like the scene where Maleficent is discovering her lineage. The score they choose to accompany it with complements the scene very well without getting in the way. That's really all I'm going to say for now. 1, because I want everyone to go see this and I don't want to spoil it. And 2, because I have a fuller review if you've already seen it and you want to know more about why I think this movie's amazing. Follow me on my Instagram at @areasonablecritic if you want to see. I saw Rise of Skywalker over the holiday break with high expectations. I really enjoyed The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens. They had compelling characters and great villains. Less so Last Jedi, but what it lacked in character it made up for story and tension. I actually think 8 was better than 7, which is something that many critics would disagree with me. Turns out, Rise of Skywalker has none of those things. Instead, it has a bizarre villain, new characters that are super underdeveloped and wasted, and it has no connection to the previous films. Legit, I was waiting the whole movie for something to connect with The Last Jedi. Anything. But nothing. This whole trilogy honestly feels like 3 different movies, even though 7, 8 were good, but it just connects something. Even the development of Rey and Kylo in 7, 8 adds nothing to the plot or anything. But to be fair, I didn't really care about their development anyway. Characters that are potentially interesting are utterly wasted. We go to a planet and we meet a new character. Oh, gone. Okay, I get it. That's not entirely fair. The fight scenes are cool and there are a couple scenes that are really, really great. Like when Kylo is visited by a memory of Han. But, unfortunately, my biggest problem is so big that it nullifies every positive this movie has. It pretty much ruined the movie. This is the twist villain's plan. He shows Kylo the Last Order, which is a bunch of ships that have Death Star lasers on them. You think this will be the climax of another movie, right? Because the plan has to develop, right? No. Instead, this movie wanted to have an epic moment like Endgame with these faceless ships, but it didn't include the decade worth of emotional investment. You want to know why Endgame's climax will be remembered for history? Because everyone was invested in these characters. We had so many characters that everyone loved. In 10 years, we're still going to be talking about Endgame. And this movie, 4 on 10. Not impressive. Not impressive at all. Blinded by the Light is such an incredible experience. It is not a movie. It is a beautiful work of art. It's really difficult to describe why this movie is so well regarded and why I love it so much, but allow me to try. Blinded by the Light is about a Pakistani who's a senior in high school that lives in the UK and faces a multitude of problems. His parents are extremely conservative and don't let him do basic things like going to clubs, dances, having a girlfriend, etc. He's also constantly berated and made fun of because he's a Pakistani in the UK. One day, he finds an artist that speaks to him. An artist that inspires him to be bold. The way this plays out is heartbreaking, intense, dramatic, and powerful. The theme is so mature. Instead of saying that you should always follow your dreams like 1,000 other movies, this movie goes deeper and expresses why that isn't always the case. If you're going to follow your dreams, get ready for the consequences. The acting all around is phenomenal, especially from the main character. He expertly delivers the tragedy of being in a household where you're forbidden to perform basic tasks, and the tragedy of racism felt by real Pakistanis today. This movie spoke to me in a way that few movies have, and it easily became my second favorite movie of all time. This is it. The movie that everyone has been waiting for. The movie that, when you see how high it is on the list, will shock you to your core. Please welcome the movie that I have the most passionate opinion for, Dora the Explorer. No, not that one. No, not that one. Yeah, that's the one. Yes, really. This movie does nothing wrong. It has cool action, interesting twists, competent directing, cinematography, writing, etc. However, it is most definitely the funniest movie I have ever seen. So many scenes call back to how ridiculous Dora the show is when you really think about it. Like, come on, a map that talks? Come on. Then there are also 1,000 great jokes a minute that have nothing to do with Dora. It kind of reminds me of the tone of a Lego movie, except funnier. Because the acting is so marvelous, it strengthens the delivery of the jokes, making anything the actors say funny. Isabella Moner and Michael Pena are the ones that really hit it out of the park for me. They could say anything and I would be on the floor dying of laughter. I really enjoyed this movie, and yes, I was actually being serious when I said I considered it for my top 10 list. Nothing I've ever seen has made me laugh so hard. Wow, we got a ton of amazing movies this year. Great action, great comedy, great drama, yeah. But now I want to see and hear what you guys think. What is your most passionate movie of the year and why? I will read every comment, and I really want to know what you guys think. Well,